Right. So we're back for another deep dive, and this time we're going to be looking at, this one's called Firefighter versus Phoenix from the Dream Journal of Nicholas Alexander Benson.
Yeah, a very evocative title. I think right off the bat we get a sense of, kind of like conflict.
Absolutely. And some of these images are, they're Nicholas.
Right.
But they're pretty out there. So what do we have here? Well, we have firefighters, but they're not your typical firefighters.
Okay.
They're armed with harpoon guns.
Harpoon guns, huh? So instead of like a hose or something, they've got harpoons. Interesting choice.
Yeah, so who are they fighting against?
Yeah.
Well, humanoid griffin women cyborgs.
Okay.
And they're all wearing pink metal armor.
Wow.
It's a very striking imagery.
Yeah, I mean, just the griffins themselves, like that's a pretty, that's a pretty powerful image right there. And then you add the whole cyborg element to it, and then pink metal armor. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, and Nicholas specifically remembers that these firefighters with the harpoon guns were aiming at something in the sky. Like they were not dealing with something, on the ground.
Right.
So that kind of makes me wonder, were they actually fighting these griffin cyborgs and we're just seeing some kind of crazy aerial battle?
It's definitely when you think about it, it's a natural assumption, like they're aiming upwards maybe at these flying creatures.
Right.
But Nicholas actually, he thought about this and he had another idea.
He did. And his other idea was that maybe those griffin women weren't actually griffins. Maybe they were more like phoenix women.
Like a firebird kind of.
Yeah, because, he figured that if you were a firefighter, the last thing you'd want to be dealing with all the time is flaming bird people landing on rooftops.
Yeah, no kidding. I can see how that would get old pretty fast.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, if we think about the title Firefighter versus Phoenix, now it's not so much a literal fight, but maybe it's more like a symbolic kind of opposition.
Right. More about like the concept of what a firefighter is, battling fire, and then this creature that's kind of like, all about fire and rebirth and all that.
And it's interesting too because they're using harpoon guns.
Right.
Which are not your typical firefighting equipment, right? I mean,
no, not at all. It's more about like capturing something or restraining it.
Right. So it's like they're not just trying to put out the fire. Maybe they're trying to control it in some way or
like contain, this like powerful force or whatever it is that these winged figures represent.
Yeah. And all those little details, the humanoid form, the cyborg enhancements, that pink metal armor, it's all very specific.
Yeah, and there's not really any context for it either. It's just kind of like these details are just there.
But they're so vivid, right? They kind of stick with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, sometimes in dreams, like the things that aren't explained are the most interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder, like, what does this mean to Nicholas personally,
So just to kind of recap, we have in Firefighter versus Phoenix, these firefighters armed with harpoon guns looking up at the sky, maybe at these humanoid griffin cyborgs.
Yeah.
Wearing pink metal armor.
Right.
And it's possible that those cyborgs are more like phoenixes, which really adds another layer to that whole conflict.
It does. And, it makes you think about, like, what could this represent for Nicholas? What's going on in his life where he's kind of battling this force of destruction and renewal. Maybe it's some kind of challenge that he's facing over and over again, or maybe it's something else entirely. But I think it's definitely something worth pondering.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.